As always, when I wrote my notes, I wrote James chapter 5. It's only 20 verses. I thought, well, that's not going to be enough. And so I wrote all this rest of this stuff to do today, and I never got there, which is fine. But we did add Matthew 5 in there, so I have to put that down. So just make sure I put that in my notes. All right, so this is what we call the Afterburn. So if you have comments or questions, I can see people already lining up. That's good. Okay. That was verses 18 and 19. Okay, good. If you're on live stream, you can start typing in your comments and questions now. All right, we'll begin with my daughter, Brianna.
I just quickly wanted to say that for the Omer challenge, I usually can find something that every day that I understand is a part of that challenge. But today's was patience / self-control towards Yahweh. And I was like, I have no idea how to apply that in my life. And of course, you go right to James 5, verse 7 through 8, and it's talking about how you need to be patient towards him because he waits for us. And that totally shifted how I viewed that fruit towards him. And I just thought it was really cool that you went through that corresponding today. So I just thought that was really cool. Awesome.
All right, so patience. Okay, so when you see the different groups that we're dealing with each fruit of the Spirit, like self, Yahweh, leadership, congregation, those out in the world, etc., it's in the context of. So it's not just patience, with, but just patience in relation to. So that might mean you're frustrated because you've asked for something he hasn't given it to you yet. It could mean that he keeps allowing you to go through some stuff you don't want to go through. It could be, so it's what issue do you have with patience in relation to your relationship with him, right? Just like patience with self was like, okay, what areas am I impatient or lacking patience with myself? All right. So an image, Brianna, you could have used just for next time is an image of them at the Red Sea waiting for it to part because they were not being patient. They were freaking out. Okay, so part of patience is I want it now, and you need to learn to be patient. Part of it is like freaking out. I don't know how this is going to work out, and I'm panicking instead of being patient. Right? So there's lots of different ways we can show that. By the way, we didn't mention this. I knew there was something I wanted to say during the announcements. So Brianna does post in the Instagram and also in the Facebook, but look for it on the page and the group now? Okay, because it's not always in the group, but so you guys should be liking the m.t.o.i page as well as being members of the group, okay? So, all right, thank you for fixing that because I know I wanted you to post it in both. All right, good. All right, Heather.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
So I had the privilege of seeing you work in what I think to be like a really mighty way when, I hope I'm going to name drop, when Carolyn brought her friends in that are attending the conference. And they're a lovely couple. I had the pleasure of spending some time with them later yesterday. And when they came in, I recognized Carolyn's voice, and I wanted to go say hello to her. And you're very, very busy. There's many times people come in, you don't come out. And when she brought them, you came right out of the office. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Rabbi doesn't come out of the office a lot. You're so busy. And she introduced them and everything. And then you had asked, why are you here? And they flat out said, well, here for the prophetic conference. But they also mentioned that they watch you online too. So they're kind of in both places. And then when she said that we were here for the prophetic conference, I was like, whoa, nice to meet you. And then you were like, well, let me talk to you, like right into rabbi mode. And so I was like, it's nice to meet you. And I went back and making some phone calls and stuff. And right when you started to talk to them, these other two people came in that just decided to stop by, and they're going to the same conference too.
Yep.
Because they just wanted to come by and see you. So right when you started talking to them, exactly the exact moment, you're like, well, this is what I want to tell you about this. These other two gentlemen came into the building.
Yep.
And then you brought all of them into here for some privacy for a discussion, which I was like, that's awesome. And then that took a while, and then after they left and everything, Marlene and I are like, man, that was awesome. Like, we got to see something, like, I hate to say the word miracle because Christianity is just messed up that word so much, but I definitely would say that that's the hand of Yahweh. Like, why would these two people randomly walk in? You don't come out of your office. There were so many things that happened in that moment that were like, that's not a coincidence. So we're just like, that is so cool. We got to see that.
Right.
So then you're talking about the scripture today. And I mean, I'm making connections and I'm thinking it's right. If it's not, of course, you'll lead us in the right way. But I see Carolyn bringing her friends, and they're listening to you, and they're kind of knowing some truth, but maybe not in the whole truth, and you're right there, and you're giving them the anointing of oil and telling them the truth and leading them into a direction, and she's bringing them. I'm making these connections in my head, and I don't know if I didn't see what happened in here in the office, if I would have been able to understand the scripture as well by not actually having a visual of something like that. Is that correct to say that that would be correlating a little bit to what you taught today?
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely can see that. And also just remember that some people are more auditory, some more visual. So you seeing it made a difference for you. Other people hearing you tell about it, is working just as fine. So it's just a matter of the way we receive information from that point of view. But the correlations are definitely here, which is why I mentioned the conference as part of what I said today. And by the way, the other two gentlemen that showed up, one of them also knew who I was, which is why he came. So he came for a similar reason. He said, well, we're just down the road, might as well go and see m.t.o.i, because he was familiar with us, but they were both workers for one of the other ministries that was at the conference.
Yeah, and then they came in at the exact same second.
They did come at the exact same second.
To me, it's not a coincidence.
And I didn't just come out of my office I came out of my office for some other reason, happened to see them there, okay? And so that's when I walked out to say hi, because like you said, I don't always come out of my office. And so I went out and I said hi. And we didn't come in here for privacy. They wanted to see where we meet, and I brought them in here to show them this, and then we ended up in a long conversation in the corner over here, just because we happened to already be in this room.
I'm sorry. So I was thinking about when David says, you anointed my head with oil, and you're making a correlation to that being some kind of a truth, like so would you say that you did that for them?
Well, to some degree. What I did was I planted a bunch of seeds before they started the conference. The conference started Thursday night. They were here Thursday afternoon, because they were early before they were letting people in. So they thought they might as well come over here. And I planted a seed of what they should be looking for that they won't find at that conference. I said, if this conference is to be of any use, then this should be happening. And I said, you guys all know this won't happen, but now if it does, you come and tell me next week after it's over, because I'm sure it won't. Because they're going to, I want to ask you a question. If you guys in the past, and maybe some of you have gone to prophetic conferences or things about prophecy before, what is it that people go there for? Why do they go? They're going because they want to hear some insight as to when he's coming back. And they want to hear how to properly, according to these teachers that are at these conferences, how to properly interpret world events currently happening in the context of prophecy. Isn't that why people go? Okay, and what value does any of that have? Nothing. The only value is it maybe makes you feel better about thinking you understand something. Okay? But there's no value in it. When I sit here teaching you how to do and obey and follow and submit and trust and all the other things that I teach you scripturally, that is a value. Okay? Because whenever he shows up, if you're not doing all of that, knowing he's coming doesn't help you at all. Look, Yahweh spoke to me, not audibly, I didn't hear a voice. Okay? When I first started ministry, okay? So this is a long time ago. And he said to me, teach them to do what they need to do and tell them if they do that, they'll be where they're supposed to be. That's it, okay? Teach them to do what they're supposed to do and they'll be where they're supposed to be. Therefore, we don't need to be at some prophecy conference or some other thing trying to figure out when the end times is or isn't happening. Because every adverse world event turns into, see, it's the end times. You know what? There's been a lot of adverse events in the history of the world since Messiah died, was resurrected, and ended up at the right hand. So in the last 2,000 years, there have been plenty of those. All right? And I said to the gentleman that came, I said, you do know that every generation has thought they were in the end times, including the first generation. The apostles all thought they were in the end times. I mean, they thought when he said the kingdom was at hand that it was coming like right then. Every generation has been wrong. So we don't know. Okay, and there's lots of videos out there showing everybody's timeline of when things are supposed to play out, and it's going to be, a day is like 1,000 years and 6,000 years and so on. You know what? We're already passing over everybody's dates. All these math geniuses and scripture geniuses think they figured things out. Look, I was familiar with a ministry, goes back about to 2010, 11, right? 2011 maybe. And they said that they had put out a timeline because they felt the tribulation countdown had started. And that 3.5 years later, we were going to be, you know what? That whole thing is already over 5 years ago that should have played out and been finished and still hasn't happened. And I told them, guys, you're wrong and you're going to be embarrassed. Of course, their website, I'm sure, is gone and that their whole ministry is gone because they were wrong. As everybody who's ever tried to figure this out has been wrong. But nobody ever learns the lesson. So they keep selling more books and more DVDs and more this and more that. And you guys keep buying them, maybe not you guys, but people in general, for no reason. Listen to what I give you, or stuff like that at least, that's going to help you become Yeshua-like. That's what you need, okay? That's what you need. If you don't understand the covenant at Mount Sinai and Torah keeping, then you need some Torah keeping instruction. You don't need to figure out how to interpret, that it's the 75-year anniversary of Israel. You don't need to how to interpret whether this is a jubilee or not a jubilee. Okay? I'm telling you, one of the guys at the conference, I'll tell you who it is, Mark Biltz, in one of his teachings, I heard it just the other day, he was talking about whatever the end time things, and his final statement was, if he doesn't come this September, which is a jubilee year, and it's also the Shemitah year, which of course every jubilee is a Shemitah year, he says, okay, because it's the big 50th on, afterwards. He goes, then we have to wait another 7 years. But he believes, come on, really? And his guys, I'm not picking on you guys, you're watching, you should be listening to me, stop listening to all that nonsense, and grow up and move out of that already, okay? Because he does this to you guys every year and you sell all of his stuff and it's useless, all right? Because if it had use, he would use it to get you into covenant and he doesn't, all right? And so that thing is nonsense. He's not coming September. And you're all like, well, what if you're wrong? Well, good, he'll be here, I don't care, all right? But you know what? If I say he's coming and he doesn't, my ministry should be done. As all of these geniuses' ministries should be done. Okay? So I'm telling you, he's not coming in September. Too much stuff has to happen. We're not ready yet. We're not ready. It's not ready. Nothing's ready. Don't be buying into all the fear and the hype and everything else. Okay? But you can go in and be entertained, I suppose, at a prophecy conference. I mean, if I held one, I'm sure we'd have thousands of people want to come, and that's fine. I should do one and just start teaching them Torah. Welcome to the Prophecy Conference. Today we're going to start off with the first session teaching you about Shabbat. Actually, we'll start with your identity. We'll teach you that you're Israel. We'll do like a CC 101 conference, Covenant Community 101. And we'll just sell it as a prophecy conference. You know why? Because it'll be speaking the word of Yahweh with authority, so it would be a prophecy conference. All right, go ahead.
I know that you humbly say it's just you being you, and this is what you do, but I just want to say thank you. It was a blessing to me to be able to just see all that play out yesterday, and I just really appreciate you.
Well, good. By the way, you said that I went into rabbi mode. I'm always in rabbi mode. People go out to eat with me. No, I'm always in the same mode everywhere. Funny thing, so I'm on the phone with my mother yesterday, and she called me Steve, which I'm so not used to hearing that it threw me for a second. And I laughed, and my mother said, what's funny? I said, everybody just calls me Rabbi. I'm not saying you, I mean, obviously, you named me. I said, I'm just not used to hearing my name used, So it's just really funny because, I actually referred to my wife as Rebbitzin to my mother. Because I'm used to calling her that too, not using her name. It was a funny moment. All right, Taylor.
All right.
And congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you. So what you said, I was sitting in the car because I had to calm down for whatever was happening in my body, but you said something that made me want to come ask a question, which is kind of hard for me to ask, but then at the same time, I want to. Something in my brain wants me to ask you. So what you said, speaking of homosexuality, it took me back when you mentioned like the whole thing with the difference between the woman and the man. And it took me back to when I was younger and having a lot of friends who were in that. And there was a lot of hatred when it came to it, and seeing a lot of people being very just, when it comes to it, and you're going to hell and all that stuff, and burning and all that stuff like that. But my question was about it. You mentioned that the woman being with the woman is not mentioned in it, but the man. So my question around it is, where do they fall when it comes to sin? So meaning like, would that be, since it's not mentioned in scripture, would that be a sin against themselves, a sin against leadership, or a sin against Yahweh to a term?
Well, it probably has several levels. Look,
okay.
First of all, because those who did not listen to me last night, which is fine, because this is, different time zones and wherever people live, but I did this as part of the Torah portion. I want to be very clear. And I recommend you guys are the same, but I don't judge anybody, whatever lifestyle, whatever dumb things they're doing, whatever it is what it is, because all of us were in dumb places and did dumb things, okay? And we often thought they were perfectly fine when we were doing them. And as a matter of fact, I have a few people in this ministry, meaning people that do follow under this ministry, that came from that lifestyle who I'm fairly close with. And I'm very proud of their journey out of that, all right? And I remember growing up and I had people that I spent plenty of time with, socially, who were in various types of lifestyles, okay? So we should not have that issue. What we have to understand is that it's not what he wanted and designed us to be. Now, when he pops their bubble, like the few that I interact with on a regular basis, they've made those decisions and changed it because he did that to them. By the way, nobody in a church did it to them. Okay, nobody like me went over and did it to them. He did it to them. He got their attention and said, no, you need to stop this. And by the way, 2 of them are women, so it's exactly the situation you're talking about, okay? So let's understand that while don't look for these loopholes, all right? The only reason then for a woman to be with a woman would be simply carnal pleasure. If that's not the way we were designed, then you're only doing it for this seeking of pleasure. And we're not supposed to be just seeking pleasure, okay? We're put here to do other things than just seek pleasure. Okay? Even man with woman, we've got a lot of people gotten that all screwed up, literally, okay, because of this idea of seeking pleasure. So yes, you still have a man and a woman, but all they're doing is seeking pleasure. We weren't designed just to seek pleasure. Now, he made it pleasurable because he wanted us to multiply, and why would we do that if we didn't enjoy the process of making that happen? So we desire that interaction, which, by the way, also then makes a baby, all right? And by the way, doing it once doesn't necessarily make a baby unless you're a 15-year-old girl and it's just your first time. Because somehow they always catch their cycle perfectly. All right? So it would have to be enjoyable enough for you to keep doing it till you make a baby. So the pleasure part of it's supposed to be there. Okay, so when we're talking about women with women, these are all Hasatan's way to eventually have us not exist, because women with women and men with men makes no more babies. So then eventually we die out and become extinct. This wipes us out. The whole LGBT, ABCDEFG, whatever, That's all designed, and they're not realizing it as they're all fighting for their rights and stupidity, okay? And I'm only saying the stupidity meaning because it's stupid that you're trying to fight for that. Be what you are. Whatever you are, be what you are. Stop trying to push that on anybody else, okay? That's the part I'm saying is stupidity. I don't care what you are. That's you. Your choice, your thing. You do what you do. You're going on your journey. Just don't impose it on me, all right? I'm not going to impose mine on you. Do what you want. But that whole agenda leads to the extinction of man. It does. Follow the path where it goes, okay? It leads to none of us ever, okay? That becomes the predominant way of life, then we disappear. So when you ask about breaches, it breaches Yahweh. Yahweh's plan was for us to have man, woman, make babies, all right? Build communities. Now, pleasure-seeking man and woman just screw around all over the place and don't make anything but a mess, all right? So there's more to it, obviously, than that. That's why he gives us a lot of instructions on how we interact with each other. Some of them are sexual, some of them aren't. Most of them aren't. So that's where that breaches. Now, as far as just a single woman being with a single woman, does that breach any other relationships? Not if they're not in any other relationships. It's not that kind of a breach. It's breaching, though, what he designed us to be. All right? It's just like he didn't design you to be drugged up, laying on a couch, unproductive. He designed you to be out there 6 days you shall labor. So that's still a breach with him. So if you're going to be someone who basically, sits around playing video games all day or doing drugs or some other thing which makes you completely unproductive and you're just sitting around being useless in society, well, that was also a breach. That's not what he designed you to do. He designed you to build and work with the place he put you on, this planet, to be productive. Did I answer the question? What?
Is it off? Okay. And one more connected to it, it's the same. But I was seeing, since he didn't specifically say that in a verse, is that connected to when you say I forgot what verse it was, not all things we are able to
Paul says not everything that's allowed is actually good for you.
Yeah. Okay. So is that connected to that?
Yeah, that would be a similar thing. Okay. And by the way, then for all of you again in any of those lifestyle things, you are welcome here, provided you're not coming here to promote and continue, but to try to figure out how to grow out of and move on. And I won't allow anybody to judge you or pick on you. And I've got a few that are as close as daughters that could tell you that, okay? I will protect you and make sure that doesn't happen. But you have to be here trying to go in that different path than where you were, okay? And so if you're sincere, that's the same, by the way, if you got out of jail and now you want to walk right. The same if you were a drug addict and now you want to work right. The same if you were this, doesn't matter, but now you want to walk right. You're welcome here. As long as you're trying to walk right, okay? We're not going to judge any of that. Just want to make sure we're clear on that. I'm not going to water down that. It says it's wrong. That's what it says. It doesn't even beat around the bush or anything. It straight out says it's an abomination. But I'm not looking at you like you're an abomination. You've been doing something, not knowing it, and for whatever reason, that it was what it was. By the way, I think a lot of us, sadly, have done abominable things at some times in our lives, even if it wasn't, outside of a heterosexual sort of point of view. We still have done things that were pretty hideous, okay? I've talked to some of you who said, yep, I've done some things and I'm never going to talk about them because they were pretty bad. That's fine, you don't need to. But just, we all can relate to that, hopefully, to some degree. All right, Michael.
Just wanted to comment on what you were talking about earlier. I wanted to begin with this anyway, that the people who are having these prophetic conferences and trying to figure out the end time stuff, I don't think they're reading the word of Messiah, because if they did, they'd see in Matthew 24, 35 and 36, where it says, the heaven and the earth shall pass away, but my words shall by no means pass away. But concerning that day and that hour, no one knows, not even the messengers of the heavens, but my Father only.
Yeah, they missed that whole thing. As a matter of fact, it's funny. Literally this morning, I was talking to my wife when I was watching a little bit of an intro to this conference just to see who was going to be there and what they were promoting. And I said, that exact thing. I said, somehow they missed the whole idea that no one knows the day or the time or the hour, and they think they've all figured it out. And they think we're supposed to figure it out. No, you're supposed to figure out that you need to be ready, period. All right, I'm going to say something I've said a lot of times. It's a very simple idea. Memorize it, own it, okay? You are to prepare your life like he's coming tomorrow. You are to live your life and plan your life going forward as if he's not even coming in your lifetime. You understand what I'm saying now? You need to be ready if he comes right away. But you need to be planning out, well, what if he doesn't, so that you're ready if he doesn't. A lot of people have made really bad decisions thinking, well, he's coming next year, so why do I have to bother with this, that, or the other thing? Well, then he didn't come next year, and you were in a bad place. All right? So don't do that. Plan for it being another generation from you. Prepare and anticipate it being in your generation. Do you understand? Then you'll be in the best place you can be. Because if he comes, you're ready, and if he doesn't come, you're ready. You have a plan, all right? I have a plan going forward 50 years. I don't know how many years I got. I'm not planning to go anywhere, right? I hope and pray he'll be here before that. And I'm going to be ready for whatever that is, whenever that is. Look, I don't know, I guess I could have died 2 years ago when I got real sick. I certainly didn't see that coming. Nobody else did. So it could have happened. You just don't know. Anything can happen to you. You got to be ready. All right, Michael?
And that kind of leads me into a question that I had from today's teaching is that Yaakov 5, verse 6, in order to remain righteous, are we supposed to avoid resisting anybody who acts against us, like trying to injure us, damage us in some way, insult us, whatever?
Look, you should extricate yourself out of any situation that you can that's adverse in terms of you being either verbally abused or assaulted in any way or physically, challenged in some way. But if there's nowhere really place to go, you should be able to sit there and take it to whatever degree you can sit there and take it, especially if it's verbal and not physical. Don't take it personal. They spit on Yeshua, they mocked him, they said every vile thing they could have said to him, and he stood there and he took it. So if we're going to become Yeshua-like, we should be able to take it. However, as a former self-defense, martial arts type trainer, I've always taught everybody, look first for the exit. Try to get yourself away from being confronted with all of that. So where possible, leave, get away from it, okay? But don't try to go toe-to-toe and fight with people, and then it could escalate into something really dangerous.
And then finally, I wanted to ask if I handled this situation yesterday correctly, because yesterday I met somebody who was really on a different page. Noticed my kippah, asked if I was Jewish. I said, well, I'm actually Messianic. She's like, oh, great, well, finally, somebody who thinks like I do, and we started talking, and I come to find out that she apparently has the correct calendar. There's only 3 Sabbaths in a month, and it's on Thursday, not Shabbat.
Right, she's using the lunar calendar.
And so and she gave me all these wonderful teachers that I should go pay attention to, and I'm like, well, I'm okay. I thank you very much for the recommendations, but have a great day.
Right. No, you handled that well. Look, let me ask you a question. How many of you would rather how many of you appreciate that I mention conferences and things when they're coming up and happening, and that I tell you the right way to look at it? Okay, good, almost every hand. Okay, how many of you appreciate when I actually name some of the people because you need to know who they are? All right, most of the hands, good. All right, because I get hesitant as to, what is appropriate in some of these things, and it's not even that I really hesitate in what's appropriate. I just don't want to deal with the fallout sometimes where people just don't have a meltdown because I'm doing certain things. I'm not attacking anybody. I think these guys could be very useful. Some of them are very, what's the word? They're talented in speaking. Like, they can speak. They can put a message together. They can get a point across. I just think they're getting the wrong points across. That's all the problem, okay, all too often. Okay, so, these conferences are going on right now, and the only reason I'm mentioning it is because they're right here in our town. And there's thousands of people that are going to that conference. And by the way, that conference has been going on for years, and I used to have a few people pop up every now and then to come in and say hi, who I thought were part of our ministry, who never came to visit us, but they came because that conference was there. Well, I guess I figured out where your heart is. You want that more titillating idea of this, the excitement of the talking about prophecy, end times, it's all, How about getting down to the hard work of becoming like him? Why don't we focus on that, right? I tell this story all the time. I was at a conference in 2001 in Tampa, okay? And it was a Messianic conference, mostly focused on praise. The only reason I was there is because I actually lived in Florida, So actually at that time I was living in Knoxville, but I knew Tampa. I had lived there before. So I went to this conference. A good friend of mine was also going to be there. And at some point, I told the story before, I got to meet with the leaders because I talked my way into it. I knew somebody who knew about this leader meeting they were having, so I got myself invited to it. And nobody back then even knew who I was. Well, today most people don't know who I am, I guess. And so this is a conference because it was mostly focused on singing and dancing and flags and banners and all the frilly pretty stuff that's all fun for all the yellows of the world, right? So a lot of these Christians all came to this because they were interested in the music and the dancing and the banners and the flags and all the other wonderful praise stuff. And I'm not mocking it. That stuff's great stuff. And yet, so there was literally a few, 1,200, 2,000, there was a lot of people at this thing. To me, I thought it was a lot of people. It was 1,200, 2,000 people at this conference, most of which didn't know anything about Torah, okay? And this was Reggie White, the football player's big coming out party as a Messianic, right? So Reggie was the keynote speaker. So I got to meet him when I was there. He shook my hand, and afterwards I had to count and make sure my fingers, his hand was as big as a baseball glove, okay? Reggie's a big guy. So, but he had and then he passed away a year later. That was his beginning of his Messianic journey, and then he was gone. So in this meeting, I said to the guys, I said, look, I got a question. I said, you've got all these people, they're brand new, they're excited about praise, you've got them in the building. How about this thought? How about teach them some basic Torah from the main stage? Because they were running all these little breakout rooms. There'd be 10 or 12 of those going on. Every hour, there was 12 choices of things you could go to. By the way, including for all you blood moon geniuses and guys who follow guys like Mark Biltz and stuff, I was at that conference in 2001, way before there was ever this other guy, and there was a guy running a breakout session who had a book and all this other stuff about blood moons. And those blood moons were happening in 2001, 2, and 3. And then, of course, this guy's ministry, you don't even know. If I mentioned him, you wouldn't even know him, because you know why? His ministry ended when nothing happened. Because he promoted this whole big deal and nothing happened. Of course, Bill's promoted and he's still there. And nothing happened. And I told it to his two guys. I said, but nothing happened. Well, yeah, the blood moons happened. Yeah, but nothing else happened. Okay? People got all hyped up about stuff and nothing happened. All right, we're still here. It's already now 5 years later or whatever, plus, because it happened back in 2015, 16, so we're 7 years later, and still nothing, right? Now, that being said, so I told these leaders, why not teach them Shabbat or something basic? Teach them something from the main stage. They're here. You've got this great opportunity. And they looked at me like I had 4 heads. I was they were like, who are you and why are you in this room? Who invited you, So I got ignored at that point. And of course, I was, at that point, 20-something years younger. And I guess they looked at me more like a kid to some degree, especially because I looked a lot younger than I am. So especially back then, I looked like I was in my 20s. And the sad part is that these guys are not going to use that bully pulpit that they have. They're not going to take the opportunity with the audience they have to say, and this is why you need to get covenanted. This is why you need to get straight and right. Well, they'll all say, well, we need to get right with the Lord. And nobody will tell them what that looks like. None of them. It's crazy stuff. Ashley.
One thing I want to say before I get my question about this whole conference thing, if it's not here, and if you're not recommending us to go to it, for me, that's an automatic, don't even think about it. Because if you really think it's that important, I'm sure you'll tell us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So my question is James chapter 5, verse 9. Really 7, 8, 9, and 10. How if I'm going through a breach of a relationship, and was sin with someone, and that person still wants to be a friend of mine, but I am hanging back because I want to see how it's going to play out, and I want to be patient and not react because I'm a reactive person, and I'm trying to just stay back and chill for a bit. How does that play with verse 9? With that, when they don't want me to be sitting back and they want me to move forward.
I'm not really sure. So it says don't grumble against each other, okay?
Yes.
So, look, grumbling, so what's grumbling? Grumbling is what you do instead of fixing it. So instead of doing something about something, you just whine and complain. That's to me, grumbling is whining and complaining. It's a non-productive way of dealing with it or not dealing with it, okay? And so if you have somebody, whatever your particular situation is, by the way, ask this question when I finish with Matthew 18. It might make a little bit more sense.
Matthew 18?
Well, we didn't get there yet, but when I get there, okay?
Okay.
Which will be probably next week, all right? Not next week, that's zone 1. It'll be in 2 weeks. But it really has to do with, everybody has to deal with their own personal situations. They have unique issues to them. You may need somebody else to come in and intervene a little bit. You may need to just have somebody give you the right words to say. There may be a lot of things going on there. You may just need to lose the relationship. Sometimes you just, relationships don't last forever. You may need to just move on. All right, so there's too many unique parameters that without knowing what specifically you're dealing with, that I can't really answer it. But I may give you more things that could apply when we get through some more of this. Because now we're shifting more towards sin towards each other, okay? We were doing sin towards Elohim for the most part. Now we're going to shift more towards sin towards each other, okay?
Okay, and just to clarify, if, I don't think it'll happen again with anyone else, but if it were, because you know how I am, such a reactive person, I'm trying to take a deep breath, think, you know how what you teach, think, don't react. And so I'm trying to do that, but then I get the pushback of, you need to say something. And am I correct in just trying to just sit and think and chill out and not do anything?
All right, again, this is not a simple answer. When I say simple, meaning it's not something that applies to everybody in every situation. Sometimes it's right just to not say anything and just to sit back. Sometimes you need to say something right away. Sometimes you need to sit back and then eventually say something. So the answer could be yes to all three possible options there, okay? So it's not a simple thing saying, well, in every situation you should do it this way or that way, because the answer is no, you shouldn't do it this way or that way in every situation.
Okay.
Sometimes I just don't say anything. I let whatever happened go and I don't say anything. I could, but I don't, right? Then other times I need to chill for a minute and then I'm going to say something. Other times I say something right away. It depends on the situation. And if you give me more details in private and we talk about it, I can help you understand what may have been the right way to handle that particular thing, okay?
Okay. And last thing, if I may, when you get to that, I don't know if it's in your interest, but if you wouldn't mind expanding upon how to know the difference between what to do?
What I just told you?
Yes.
It'll come easier. It'll come easier because remember, you're not everybody else. Okay, so how you handle it's going to be maybe different than how the next person next to you is going to handle it. So for you, it may be best to do A. For somebody else, it may be best to do B. There were 3 choices there, right? So for you, it just depends. And sometimes for you, the answer will be any one of those 3. It just depends on what's going on. All right? And so you'll have to gauge it through. A lot of it's going to have to do with whether or not something actually needs to be said, and if so, by you. Okay? Because a lot of you guys, especially on the blue spectrum, all right, you feel like that person needs to be told. Well, not always, or not always by you, all right? But what they're doing is wrong. Well, then Yahweh will take care of it one way or the other. Maybe they need to be told that they're wrong. Fine. At least let somebody like me know, and then I can help you figure out what to do with it, whether it should be you or somebody else making that comment. It's not simple. Right? Relationships are all complex to the idea that they have 2 unique individuals or more involved, which means the next situation will have different individuals involved, or at least some combination that's different. And so you can't just use the same parameters for every single thing. It won't work.
Okay, so that would tell me that he treats us all
That helps tell you, yes, that he treats us all individually, exactly. So that's a good message to get from it. Yes, you figured that out. It was good. Okay? Amy.
To finish up, I forgot what I wanted to say earlier, is that I was excited because Yahweh made it so I could understand that this was a chance for me to practice the vertical structure. And it didn't matter what the guy was like. It mattered what I was doing. And so I was grateful for that opportunity to learn to do that structure.
Good, perfect.
So is it more important that, like Deuteronomy 17, I have a heart for this, but sometimes the physical part is not, like I'm a responder, I'm not a self-starter, but inside I'm excited about this. This is the best thing that's ever happened. My family doesn't communicate with me as much since I moved here, so this is all I got. So is it more important that my desire is in it, or that I can do the mechanicals perfectly? And then everybody's talking about sex lately, but I'm more interested in the 23 hours and 45 minutes of the other part of the day that goes on.
There you go. There you go. There you go. A really good friend of mine used to tell me I'm going to give her the best 3 minutes of her life. I said, you don't understand women at all. All right, that's not going to work. All right. That's before I became a rabbi. He used to say those things to me. All right, so look, the answer to your question, though, about the how you feel on the emotional side versus the mechanics, no, you need both. You just may be working more on one than the other from time to time as that kind of balance shifts, okay? So sometimes we struggle more with the mechanics and we may put more attention on it because the emotional side seems to be going pretty good. And then at some point, maybe the mechanics are going pretty good and now we realize you gotta work on the desire or the emotional side, okay? So it's not, again, a simple answer. It really depends on what you're going through at that moment. Some of you really need to work on the mechanics. Some of you really need to work on your desire and understanding of why you're here, as opposed to just focusing on the mechanics. But you're gonna need both, okay? You're gonna need both. All right. Janet or Mateo?
Yes, he's gonna ask a question, but I can help with phrasing the question.
Sure.
Can I talk? Can I talk?
Sure.
Okay. I miss croissant.
Croissant is my husband's nickname because he's French.
Okay. You miss your dad?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your question?
I miss him.
Oh, that's good. He's going to be coming soon for Shavuot. Yeah. Yeah. And I know he misses you too.
What do I do? What do I do?
He's asking, what do I do with missing him?
With the missing him? Okay. Well, first of all, it's very normal to miss your dad, so that's good. So that's normal. And what you could do is just try to make as much time as you can, or maybe you could talk to Olivier about spending some time where you can just make FaceTime or something where they could see each other, and just give him as much time as you can, using the technology we have until he actually gets here. Okay? And so let's see if we can make some special time so you and Dad could get to talk to each other more. Is that good?
Yeah, I had some more.
Okay, one more?
Yesterday I had hiccups.
Oh, you had hiccups?
Is that it?
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
All right.
Thank you.
There are all kinds of interesting, good and bad tasting cures for that. The good news, Mateo, is that hiccups don't last forever. That's good, right? They do go away eventually. So, although at times they can come at the worst possible time. I've been very thankful I haven't had them when I'm teaching. That would really be, I'd be sitting up here, now watch, I'm going to cause myself to start hiccuping. Okay? All right, thank you, Mateo. Thank you for the questions. Yeah. I think those are the first words I've ever heard you say. And you said them very well. You spoke very well. Good job. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Rabbi, for allowing this.
No problem.
Rabbi, I just have a quick question about...
Allowing it. I'm just so proud that
Yes.
Mateo wanted to come and talk to me.
I thought he was
so
just
good.
coming to
No.
stand with me, but he said, no, I have a question. I'm like, great, that's good.
And you can talk to me anytime you want, okay? We can make some time and you can talk to me. All right, good. Yeah. All right.
I speak French.
Ah. Well, I speak a very little bit of French, okay? It's one of the subjects I failed in high school. Okay, so go ahead.
My quick question, Rabbi, you have been saying own it, fix it, move on. And for the first time, I'm like, oh my goodness, I really need to own a few things. So, and you said own it in front of somebody. So counseling will be what will be the best place to
Yes.
actually address specific things.
Yes.
So I'm going to make an appointment then. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, Rocky.
Thank you, Rabbi. Wow, it's hard to follow that.
It is?
Mm-hmm.
It
That
is.
choked me up. Yeah. Whew. Okay. So where was I? Oh, okay. So everything that is was created by something that hasn't been seen, the spiritual. You know, spiritual is thought, it's word, it's speech. None of that can be seen. You know? It's spiritual is the rational soul, the mind. You know, and you've been talking about this conference, this conference they're having. And it was something that it just came to me that, man, there's these spiritual forces that are working. And it's unseen. And we talk about this Hasatan, this accuser, you know, this adversary. But we also seem like we forget to talk about this entity. I think it's the same one. I do believe it's the same one. It's Lucifer. That he can actually transform into this angel of light, that you can believe that this is the truth. And I'm just wondering how much that spiritual force is working in that conference, that light, that false light, that really isn't what really is the truth. Doesn't that make any sense? I'm going to sit down. Thank you.
Sure. All right, look, first of all, the only reason I'm talking about the conference is because it's got people there that should know better and be more doing, you know what I'm saying? That's the only reason I mention it. And because it's also in this town, all right? I think that the Beware False Prophets teaching, Rocky makes that case very strongly, okay, about that for people to fall for the false has to look like what you expected the true to look like. So that's why it says that even the demons would appear like ministers of light, and that Hasatan himself would show up, you'd think it was Elohim himself, okay? So it would be that impressive. And some of you that have been in the occult have seen that, okay? You know how impressive that can be. We're not talking about the horns and the red tail and all the nonsense, but this very impressive looking being that you would think is Messiah himself, okay? And so, but my only reason for talking about these things is because, again, I think over time, two things are going to be happening. I'm trying to think of two things are going to be happening. One is, more and more, there's going to be this call for larger groups and integrating together and unity of some sort of a body, okay? And so that's going to be what you see happening. And by the way, some of these splinter groups from here and other things, that's what all they talk about, this idea of somehow everybody's got to come together. And now, while that same time that's happening, there's going to be a greater and greater obvious, hopefully, or I think obvious contrast between what's going on there and what we're doing, if you're open to see it. Because people don't understand why I don't do certain things with certain people or have certain people come and speak or whatever it is. I said, because we're not on the same page, okay? And so I'm not going to present confusion in front of you. Not that the people I put in front of you would be confused, they're just not on the same page that we are. And they don't understand what we're doing and where we're going and why we're doing it. They want to all sit around and sing Kumbaya in a circle, and they want everybody and anybody can just stand up and say anything and nobody's ever going to correct them. And that's not helping anything. Well, it is. It's helping Hasatan's plan of confusion and chaos and a mess. So I got to believe the more effective we are, okay, me specifically, the more effective that what we're doing here is, the more there's going to be something that is to compete with, to draw away from, especially nearby. No surprise that after we moved here and started this, that they started their thing down the road, okay? Almost immediately after we started here. Now, we already been around, we had just moved to this area. You know, we moved only 20 minutes up from where we were, and they'd lived in this area for, you know, the one ministry we're talking about lived here for way before that, had been here for a long, long time, but they didn't have a congregation until after we bought this building, so that Hasatan could have his comparison. And all you guys watching it, I hate that I just said that about your group. Okay? But stop kidding yourselves. You guys are Christianity with a little bit of Hebrew and a little bit of Torah on Saturday. All right? And that's what you become. And I know you don't like it. I don't like it either. It is what it is, though. All right? So I just want to make sure that we're clear about that. So I'm not just here to name names and this, that, and the other thing. I want you to understand that this is the kind of stuff you could be drawn towards, because some of the people that you might think are respectable in the sort of Torah observant Messianic side are connected to these things. But you need to know, just go listen to what they're teaching and you'll know right away. If you have any discernment at all, you'll know, okay? You'll see that that's what's happening. So I don't understand, you know, how so many of the people that started off here ended up there. Although actually, now that I look and watch, I don't see many of them there anymore. They've left there too. So I don't know where they are. They're just sitting there pouting, being stubborn and not coming back here. All of you that are watching, come back. Just knock it off. Come here, do what you need to do, which means you need to come to me, own what you did, apologize for it, show your desire to be here and everything, and then let's get moving forward, okay? But, you know, that takes a maturity that you claim to have that you don't. Because I watch you guys, you all claim, oh, we're mature. Well, then, but you're not acting mature, okay? Anyway, go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Rabbi. Since we get teachings, but we also get this counseling as a corporate family, and I appreciate it. I'm excited about it, even though I'm fairly new. Last night in your teachings, or in the readings, we read at the end of Leviticus, the word Azrael. And I want to tie it today when you mention the conference that's going on down the street, which I don't know anything about that.
Right.
But a lot of those people will pull from the book of Enoch. And you mentioned Enoch last night, and it got me thinking last night and today. Do we put any validity in that, even though it's not a part of the canon or part of the scriptures that we have? Should we stay away from stuff like Enoch? And that's what I would ask you. Is that something that we should even read and put our belief or faith in it?
Good question. And actually, somebody asked it on Facebook, and I didn't answer it yet. I'm sorry. And actually, they sent an email saying, when are you going to answer my question? And I'm sorry, but I'll get to your questions eventually. Again, if it's going to require me to write out something lengthy, my problem is, as I'm writing, some other person is going to jump in and try to answer it. And I don't want to feel the rush that I have to type fast just because I know somebody's going to jump in there. Which is part of the group problem, is that, you know, as soon as I post something, it'll pop onto somebody's notifications, and then they'll feel like they need to jump in. All right. So, first of all, before I answer your question, I want to bring up something that Heather brought up, just so it's clear. Heather, part of those things with the miracles or whatever you want to call it, the things where you got to see people showed up and then I did this or whatever it was. Only reason that we're talking about this right now is because those people showed up. I didn't know anything was going on otherwise. I wouldn't have known anything was going on otherwise. So I felt that there was a significance to the fact that they showed up and told me about this thing that was happening to make this something that I needed to share. I had no idea otherwise, okay? I only know because people showed up literally on my doorstep and told me about it, okay? Just so that's more clear, okay? Now, that being said, the apocryphal books, can there be some use in them? Possibly, I guess. I have looked at these books. I do not use them. I don't use them for doctrinal positions. I don't use them for any of those kind of things. Yes, Enoch does talk about Azazel, okay, as a fallen angel. And that's what we read about in the Leviticus 16, and it was talking about the two goats and the scapegoat, the one for Azazel. That being said, though, all that you need is in the Tanakh and the Brit, okay? Everything you need to know about what he expects you to do is in the Tanakh. Everything you need to know about Messiah is in the Brit. So you got what you need. Now, when you're trying to understand something that's not really covered in those two areas, maybe you can get something like, for example, when Melchizedek has lunch with Abraham, or Abram, because it was before he changed his name, it doesn't say who Melchizedek is. Well, but you go in the book of Yashar, the book of Jasher, which is another peripheral book, it tells you that that's Shem. Okay, that may be right, it may be wrong. I think it's right, I think it's Shem. Most of the Jewish community believes it was Shem. But the thing is, it doesn't say it anywhere in the Tanakh, so you don't have that. It doesn't say it in the Brit either. So, not having that information, Tom, which is what I'm going to answer your question with, is not having that information doesn't hurt anything. So, could it be interesting? Sure. But what if you start going into these books, and now you're doing the Enoch calendar, and now you're doing all these other things that come out of these peripheral books? Now you may have some problems. Because now I know a group of people, all right, who use Enoch, they use Jasher and Enoch more than anything else. Jubilees probably also. More than they use the Tanakh at this point. They literally do all of their teachings out of those books. That's the thing I don't want you doing. So I'm not telling you not to read them. Read them. I've read them. It's not, but the point is, what weight do you give them? That's where the problem can come in. All right? Because I've seen people shift where all of the weight now is there, okay? And they really don't give any weight to anything in the Tanakh over that. And so, because when I talk to them, that's all they talk about. When you listen to them teach, that's all they teach from, okay? And of course, then you have your other calendar issues that all come out of Enoch. All right, so anyway, all right. We are really on the late side, but you know what? You guys okay? Can I give the live stream a few minutes? Once upon a time, we did this service in like 2 hours. That was over 20 years ago, but we did this in like 2.5 hours. We did it every 2 hours. Now we struggle to get 4 hours to get it done. Now it's almost 5, okay? All right, hallelujah. Of course, elders back there thinking, well, that's because you did the prayer time. I said, yeah, that's probably why. Because I had something to say about everything everybody said. All right. And by the way, that's another contrast. You should expect whoever's at the microphone with the responsibility, oversight responsibility, to have something to say about almost anything that gets said, to make sure that the context of it or the point of it doesn't get lost or confused or make a wrong point. Because I know there's a couple other groups out there that let anybody and everybody talk, and the leader sits there like this. Maybe it doesn't even move that much. I wonder if the camera's on. But I'm just saying, it never says anything when people are saying all kinds of stuff that somebody should say something. So maybe I say too much, but if you say something that needs something to be said, I will say it. Okay? Makes the service longer, but it is what it is. All right, Rob. Shabbos Rob.
Okay, from Andy Superfan says, you mentioned partnership / marriage, etc. last night and today. Do we as women have to get married? Is our existence to procreate and nothing else? Okay, the answer is no, you don't have to get married. And no, your existence is only to procreate. I'm just have to understand the purpose that the Creator had in making man was procreation. That was the purpose. Now, Adam wasn't going to procreate by himself, so he gave him a wife.
and then told them to be fruitful and multiply. That is sort of the base core purpose, all right? Now, if you don't end up married, there's other things that we bring. Also, by the way, other than making kids, we also do other things in industry and produce food and produce shelters and we do other things that build societies and to help the societies function. And so we're not expected, as the person said, to spend our only 15 minutes of the sexual part, and then you carry a baby, have a baby, whatever. But we have other things that we do, right? Our Messiah was a carpenter. Okay, other people had other jobs and other tasks that they did that brought into the mix what society needs to function. So no, your existence isn't to procreate only and nothing else. The purpose he made you for was procreation. That's why he made you a man and a woman with the ability to make more of us. I don't see how we can argue with that. And literally, if you're going to listen to him, he says, be fruitful and multiply. So that's what we were supposed to do. Now, he also allowed some people to be barren, other people not to actually find a mate where they can procreate, or by the time they do, they're too old and it doesn't get to work out the way. So that's all fine. You bring other things to the mix. Okay, every one of you brings something to the mix. Because, by the way, and those are the really important some things from the point of view of when we get to the kingdom, we're not making more babies. But all the things other things that you bring to the mix, you're going to then be utilizing in the kingdom forever. The skill sets that you have and the ideas and the creativity and all the other things that you bring, that's going to be valuable forever. Okay? So hopefully that helped. Next.
From Joseph Neal, says Rabbi, Matthew 5:20 shows that those who are teaching others to break Torah shall by no means enter the reign. Is this correct?
For I say to you, unless you're, yes. Well, it does kind of say that then in verse 20. It says, for I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall by no means enter into the reign. Okay? So that's an additional sort of part of the puzzle from the previous verses saying that those who teach men, those who break the commandments and teach men to break it would be called the least. Okay? So he's saying, not only that, but your righteousness has to exceed the righteousness of these guys who you think are so righteous. Otherwise, by no means are you going to enter the reign. Okay, Joe Neal, that was good. Thank you.
Okay, from Shelley Bell, says, Rabbi, would James 5, verses 1 through 6 connect to 1 John 2:15 of do not love the world or that which is in the world?
Yes. Okay. I would say yes. Next question.
Okay, from Greg Wallen, Rabbi, what does, quote unquote, day of slaughter in Jacob 5:5 imply, and what relationship may the pleasure and luxury be breaching, or does it apply to something else?
I'm not really sure what to do with both those questions. Okay, let me start with the first part, okay? The day of slaughter. What is the day of slaughter? If you've got cattle, what is the day of slaughter? You wait for them to do what? Get fat. So you're waiting for them to get to a certain size before you slaughter them. He says, so the metaphor here is that you have fattened your hearts as in the day of slaughter. In other words, your hearts are up to fullness, ready to now get killed. You're so full of yourself, you're ready for slaughtering. Okay? So when he says as in the day of slaughter, he's talking about the metaphor of fattening and slaughter. So then, in other words, you're bringing upon yourself the slaughtering that's going to come to kind of get your head back in place where it needs to be because your heart's all in the wrong direction. Okay? The other part was, made the pleasure and luxury be breaching. Yes. Okay, so pleasure and luxury is not literally that, having pleasure and having luxury is the problem, is that it's you just overflowing luxuriously in yourself and in your own ways, in your own thoughts, in your own pleasures, and all of you. Okay? Everything in the first 5 verses is all about, you think you've got all of this wonderful stuff because it's all about you, when your stuff is garbage. His stuff is all that wonderful stuff. Okay, his stuff doesn't rust. It talks about gold and silver rusting, which is really strange because it's not going to rust, right? But he's saying you think of it as gold and silver, but it's rusting because it's really not. There's your picture. There's your metaphor. All right, next.
Okay, this last one I have that's relatable is from Bree. It says, Rabbi, in the scriptures, James 5:20, the side note shows Proverbs 10:12. Love covers many sins. Is this love then when the wayward person turns to the correct path?
All right, look, don't just follow scripture references. In other words, just because it's in the footnotes and somebody thought it was connected because it had something similar to say doesn't mean it's actually connected, okay? Okay, nobody has a Bible with inspired footnotes. They're just people putting footnotes saying, oh, here's another verse that talks about covering sins. So are they connected in some way? I'm sure they're connected in some way. But understand, this is not talking about love in that way. It says love can cover sins. We actually get that in 1 Corinthians 13 too, the love chapter, right? It talks about love covering a lot of sins. What he's talking about here is that you, in going to your brother and getting them back into truth, that will fix the breaches and that will then get them out of those sins. They will no longer be sinning. This is a much more functional thing, okay? Love, on the other hand, if I love you, I can overlook a lot of breaches on a certain level because of the love, okay? Now that's a different level of love than, say, even a husband and wife, because if you have some breaches, husband and wife's gonna get divorced. I'm talking about more like a parent and a child. You breach as much as you want, I'm still gonna love you, you're my child. I might not like you at all, but I'm gonna love you, you're my child, okay? And so love can cover that, especially when you come back like the prodigal and say, I'm so sorry, and that kind of a thing. All right, next.
That's all we have, Rabbi.
Oh, good. All right, thank you all.